Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this edition of Defense News Weekly, we'll go inside the confirmation hearing for the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs, break down massive changes in Navy and Marine Corps leadership, and see the stories of several inspiring service members with in-depth interviews, up-close video, and leading analysis. This is Defense News Weekly. Welcome to this week's edition of Defense News Weekly. I'm Jeff Martin. This week was rocked by Pentagon leadership changes, which shook up the expected future makeup of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In addition, we also honored several inspiring service members, and we'll share some of their stories a little later on. But before that, let's take a look at some of this week's top stories. The Navy was rocked this week by the withdrawal and retirement of Admiral Bill Moran, who was set to become the new Chief of Naval Operations. Moran withdrew over his relationship with a former subordinate who was found to have behaved inappropriately by the Navy. But what was even more shocking to some was the expected nomination of Vice Admiral Mike Gilday, currently the Director of the Joint Staff and a career surface warfare officer. Gilday is the first three-star to be named to the CNO job since Admiral Elmo Zumwalt was nominated in 1970. It's unknown when Gilday will face the Senate for confirmation, but the current CNO, Admiral John Richardson, is set to leave office in September. Another shocking story this week was allegations of sexual assault by Air Force General John Hyten, who's been nominated to be the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. According to the Associated Press, a female officer under Hyten in his current role at U.S. Strategic Command accused him of unwanted advances at the 2017 Reagan Defense Forum in California. One investigation found insufficient evidence to charge him or recommend any punishment. The accuser alleges that Hyten retaliated against her in performance reports. It's expected that this news will jeopardize Hyten's nomination, as he has yet to face a confirmation hearing in the Senate Armed Services Committee. And the United States Marine Corps has a new Commandant, General David Berger. In a ceremony this week at the Marine Barracks at 8th and I in Washington, D.C., he took over from General Robert Neller, who is set to retire after leading the service since 2015. Berger is recognized as one of the top minds in the Corps and takes over as the service is figuring out its role in future great power conflict. Berger has indicated that defining that role will be a key part of his tenure atop the Marine Corps. And this week marked the swan song for the Air Force's AC-130U Spooky gunships, as the last one of those arrived back at Hurlburt Field in Florida after the type's final deployment. The U-model gunships are being replaced by the J model, which is based on the C-130J. In fact, those new gunships recently made their combat debut in Afghanistan and are set to get some new capabilities in upcoming years. Sweden is set to become the first international partner to join the British sixth-generation fighter program. The UK took the wraps off of Tempest last year at the Farnborough Air Show, and an industry announcement involving the two nations is expected to be made at the Royal International Air Tattoo event beginning on July 19th. British government officials have pledged the equivalent of $2.5 billion to the fighter jet program, making it clear that the affordability of the program leaned heavily on the participation of foreign partners to bring markets and technology to the table. The program aims to have the first aircraft flying around 2035. And the Pentagon is looking to transfer $50 million within its fiscal year 2019 budget to cover the design and development of a prototype mobile launcher for its long-range hypersonic weapon, or LRHW. Hypersonic weapons are part of the Army's top modernization priority, long-range precision fires, and the plan is to field hypersonics with soldiers by 2023. But the service still needs to build a transporter erector launcher, or TEL, to accommodate two hypersonic missiles, which is where that extra $50 million comes in. However, congressional defense committees must approve the funds before the program moves forward. Another big event this week was the confirmation hearing of Army Chief of Staff General Mark Milley to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Here are some highlights of that hearing.
There have been no on-camera briefings at the Pentagon for more than 300 days. I think the American public is very supportive of our men and women in uniform. I think they believe in our military and in its mission, but I think they also need to better understand and know what's happening at the Pentagon. And to the extent that there is no opportunity to provide that information, to provide some transparency, the public is not able to get the information they need. So I don't know if you can tell us why it's been so long since we've had any on-camera briefings, but so I would ask you that first, and then ask you if you will do everything you can to try and ensure that there are regular opportunities for the public to engage, and members of the press to engage with someone from the Pentagon who can answer questions for the public.
I don't know why, and I didn't even realize it was that many days, but I would commit to you that if I'm confirmed, I commit to transparency within the bounds of classification, and we'll do media on the record, off the record briefings, and so on. The American people have a right to know what the military is doing within the bounds of classification, and the media is the means by which they do that.
European Defense Initiative, EDI, has been instrumental, I think most folks agree, in making sure EUCOM has the resources it needs to posture itself to defeat Russian aggression. Former Secretary Mattis and some members of this committee have both called for an Indo-Pacific equivalent to EDI. We haven't seen a lot of progress on that front. Let me just get your views on that. Do you think that having a multi-year resourcing initiative like EDI for the Indo-Pacific would be useful, something worthwhile?
I think it would be useful, but it's like anything else. When we're talking about money and resources, it's a balance. And to do the detailed analytical work, I'd have to get back to you on the specifics of that. But yes, it would be useful.
Finally, let me just ask you about, pick up a line of questioning that Senator Cotton mentioned about the balance we have to strike in the different AORs. In your written response to a question of to what extent does achieving U.S. national security interests in the Middle East require a continuous U.S. military presence there, you referenced to the National Security Strategy, said that it directs the Department to retain the necessary American military presence in the region to protect the United States and our allies from terrorist attack and preserve a favorable regional balance of power. Can you elaborate on that and to the degree you're able to in this setting, tell us more about what you think it takes to do that sustainably while also adhering to NDS priorities?
Well, I think that there's a variety of capabilities that we have there now, and those go up and down depending on the situation at the moment in time. But in general, across the board, we are approaching our allies and partners in the region with train, advise, assist, enable, and provide various foreign military sales for equipment in order for them to secure themselves and to stabilize the situation within any of their countries. So that's the fundamental strategic approach to that. And in other cases, naval cases, for example, we're trying to put a coalition together right now, as we heard earlier, and General Dumfries is on the lead for that, to try to escort commercial vessels and so on through the Persian Gulf. So it's different types of capabilities, but train, advise, assist, enable our local partners within the region to try to defend themselves and stabilize the situation.
To keep up to date with all of our coverage, be sure to visit our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Also, be sure to add us on Apple's News app and some other platforms for the latest updates. And when we come back, we'll honor some inspiring service members. Every year, the Service Members of the Year event honors those members of the armed forces who go above and beyond. Nominated by their peers, these military members were honored at an awards ceremony and dinner in Washington, D.C., sponsored in part by Bell. One of the biggest debates in European defense right now is whether to buy American or buy European. To get more insight, our Europe editor, Sebastian Springer, talked with the chief of the European Defense Agency.
The European defense momentum is not universally loved. We know that Washington has had has expressed some problems with access to the PESCO infrastructure. What is the state of play in that back and forth?
Well, I think what we are trying to do at European level with the different initiatives, not only PESCO, but also the European Defence Fund and the Coordinated Annual Review of Defence, is really trying to get European defence efforts to become more efficient to the benefit of Europeans, but also to the transatlantic link. I think it's in the interest of the US and of NATO that we have a more capable set of forces in Europe which can be deployed or used, be more sustainable than they are today. I always say that in Europe it's not a lack of capabilities, of sufficient air combat aircraft or of Navy ships. The issue is that the offer is very fragmented with duplications and inefficiencies. We might have combat aircraft, but not the air-to-air refueling means to be able to deploy them. For example, we might have enough types of one type of ship, but not the mine countermeasure systems, and so on and so forth. So what we need is to have a common set of priorities, which we do in the agency in close coordination with our NATO allies, Secondly, that gives place to projects which are to the benefit of European defense and to NATO as a whole. Now, that of course is something which is going to take time to consolidate, to have it embedded in the national defense plans. What is important for me are the three no's. The three no's is we need to do that first, not changing the rules of procurement in the defense markets in Europe, which is not happening. What we are doing does not have to affect other cooperative endeavors, multilateral or bilateral with the US, which is not going to happen. Third, those capabilities will not be owned by the EU, but they will be owned by individual member states. So that's the third. And the fourth one is that we are not distracting or diverting from the NATO targets. So what we are doing also contributes to the achievement of the NATO targets. So those are the four no's we need to follow. And of course that leads us to a situation in which we only have one single set of forces for 21 of my member states in the agency. So we cannot allow ourselves to think these capabilities are going to be used for national terms at European level or for NATO. We develop those capabilities so with a single set of forces principle in mind. So it will reinforce both EU and NATO.
Do you think that is well understood in Washington? There's been letters going back and forth. Do you foresee that to be the end of it, or?
I think as all EU initiatives, but also allied initiatives, they have to be clarified and explained to our nearest allies like the US, and we will continue to do that effort. Today, the High Representative, Madame Mogherini, is in Washington talking to her American counterparts, and I'm sure this will be part of the discussions.
For the Americans, the crux of the matter is the precise rulings on third-party access, so states that are outside the EU to access the PESCO framework. What is the state of play on finding agreement on that within Europe?
The discussions are still going on, the negotiation among member states, and there is a wish expressed in the conclusions of the Council yesterday to reach an agreement as soon as possible to allowing third states to participate in PESCO projects. I would say in any case that the 34 PESCO projects that exist at present are all in the ideation phase, so I would not get too agitated of the need to have something tomorrow, because we are still, as I say, in a very early phase of developing all these projects, and the added value that third states can bring to it is always still possible. It's not a closed situation yet.
Stay tuned, and when we come back, we're going to honor some inspiring service members. On this week's Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Brian Parker offers his latest tips.
Is your mission to pay off high-interest credit card debt, pay for your kids' college, or take on a pricey home improvement project? A cash-out refinance or home equity loan can help pay the way. Both loans use your home's equity, but which is the better option for you? Let's take a look at the facts. A cash-out refinance is a new mortgage, replacing your old one that lets you borrow extra money as part of your new home loan. Your payments will reset under new terms, and you can score a lower interest rate than your original mortgage. Another great option to consider is a fixed-rate home equity loan, sometimes referred to as a second mortgage. This operates more like a traditional home loan where you get a specific amount of money based on the equity available in your home. There's a set schedule to repay the loan, ranging from 5 years up to 20 years, and it offers a fixed interest rate. Whatever your financial needs may be, making the best decision starts with understanding your options. It's best to talk with your trusted financial institution to see what works for you.
Thanks, Brian. We'll see you next time. To get more defense news coverage, be sure to visit our website at defensenews.com and subscribe to our Early Bird Brief, delivered to your inbox every weekday morning to get you ready to start the day. And when we come back, we'll honor some inspiring service members. Every year, we honor service members and veterans whose stories inspire us. One of those this year was Adam Keyes, an Army veteran disabled in an IED attack in Afghanistan. This is his story.
You don't have to change the way you live just because things around you have changed. You may have to adapt, but sometimes that's the fun, is finding a new way to do it, because the same old gets old. I'm Staff Sergeant retired Adam Keyes. I was in the 20th Engineer Brigade out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I just always wanted to be part of something bigger than I was, and the military provides that. And after 9/11, and being 17 years old at the time, we saw what was happening, and it changed everything. My platoon and myself were ready when we deployed. It was just like, hey, we're gonna train here at Bragg, we're gonna train hard, and then we're leaving the day after Christmas, so be ready. We left our fob on our mission, and we did get attacked, but there was quite a bit of damage, and one of our trucks was down. Ultimately, we had to bring the platoon sergeant's truck to the front of the convoy. We got next to this village we were gonna go through that had suspected IEDs in it, so I opened the door, put one leg out, and I never even hit the ground. That's when everything went dark for me. I woke up 2 months after the fact, and I remember the doctor saying, Adam, do you know who this is? And they referring to my family. I said, of course, that's my mom and dad, my sister. And I said, I love you. And that's when Mom looked at them and said, I told you. She knew I wasn't going anywhere, and neither did I. Oh. That one gets me every time. Every time. On July 14, 2010, Sergeant Chase Stanley from California, Sergeant Zachary Fisher from Missouri, Specialist Matthew Johnson from Minnesota, and my high school friend, Specialist Jesse Reed from Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, did not survive that attack, and I carry that with me ever since that day. It's almost 9 years since I was injured now, and I started saying I don't want anybody's pity, and I started to challenge myself. In the beginning, it was hand cycling marathons. Another big one is climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. That was a huge feat. And although I trained and I trained and I trained, I still had a little bit of doubt. But I got a good team behind me. I had a lot of support through family and friends. And if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. I'm a stand-up comedian as well. Comedy has been therapeutic for me because you gotta laugh, man. That's my thought process about things now.
Let me just address the elephant in the room right away so we can move past it. Yes, I am in fact Canadian.
Because something terrible happened to me doesn't mean I have to live terribly the rest of my life. The odds were stacked against me. I never gave up. I never thought about giving up. And people even ask me, even to this day, like, did you ever see the light? Because they know that I brought back to life, I always say I never saw the light, and that's because I was not going anywhere. Not because there is no light, it's because I wasn't going anywhere. And I felt that the entire way through, and I just kept saying to myself, I'll be back. And here I am.
This year's Soldier of the Year has been recognized as one of the Army's best warriors, but yet he's also beat cancer after a brain tumor was found in 2017. Since then, Specialist Shayn Lindquist has been an inspiration to others. Take a look.
There's a quote by Martin Luther King. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And I feel like that just defines my experience, because it's who you are during that hard time. It's how you persevere through something difficult. My stepdad was former Army. He was 82nd Airborne paratrooper. Once my stepdad came into my life and he had that prior service attitude to him, it kind of finally gave me that final push and motivation to, all right, I'm going to join. And then I did it really early too. I was 17. I was a junior in high school. The following summer, once I graduated high school, I shipped off to basic. February 2017, I competed in the Best Warrior competition. I represented my battalion and our brigade. I got first place, and I was supposed to go and compete again at the next level up. And I knew something was wrong. I would notice that my vision was like fuzzy or like slightly double vision, and I didn't understand what was going on. I was diagnosed with a germinoma brain tumor, like right in the center of my brain, blocking cerebral fluid from flowing to my spine, so I was having swelling in the brain just from the buildup of the fluid, and I was having dizzy spells and double vision, and I was in disbelief. I didn't really know what to say, and I was like, am I gonna, what do I do? And I had brain surgery. Then I went through 4 rounds of chemotherapy. Then I went through 3 weeks of radiation therapy. My unit was really there for me. No matter how bad of a day it was for me, no matter how upset I might have been, my unit was the positive energy that kept my spirits up and made sure that I was going to not let chemo drag me down. So for me, volunteering is really important because I get a lot of pride doing it. I got started volunteering at this camp that's for pediatric cancer patients, and you realize that this could be their last summer doing it. So your whole goal is to make them forget they even have cancer for a week. From there, I started volunteering with the military funeral details because the Army motto is like, leave no man behind. And being on the detail, you truly are not leaving any man behind. You're making sure that they are not forgotten. So even when they are deceased and they have finished serving, you want to make sure their family realizes that they did a great thing and the Army is going to take care of them. After my fight with cancer, I finally got to airborne school. I realized that all this hard work I put in to try to be healthy again paid off. It was just an amazing feeling because I knew, you know what, I'm feeling great. Like, cancer had nothing on me. I graduated honor grad in my class for airborne when I got to go up, and I was a second generation guy going up to get pinned on, and my stepdad was the guy who came up and pinned his original wings from the 90s when he went through airborne school on me. I think that was the proudest moment I've ever had in the Army. I'm going on 2 years into remission. I realized that my aspirations can be achieved. My ultimate goal in the Army is to go to OCS, become an officer. I have a huge aspiration to go to Ranger School. So I feel like once you get that Ranger tab, you've just proven to everyone that you are a true warrior. Cancer was the hardest thing I've ever done. If I can inspire one person who is going through cancer right now to see the light on the other side and just realize that it's a minor road bump and they're gonna get through it, and they can even do greater things than they did before or afterwards, that's my goal. I've accomplished my goal.
Master Chief Petty Officer Raina Hockenberry is this year's Sailor of the Year. After being shot in an insider attack in 2014, she fought off medical retirement, all while never stopping leading those under her. This is her story.
It means so much to serve my country. I grew up in a military family, and to be able to continue is just awesome. Knowing that I'm a part of something bigger, there is no life better than military life. I was injured on August 5th, 2014. We were on a site visit to an Afghan training facility. An Afghan soldier opened fire on my unit. I was the senior enlisted for the unit. I was hit 5 times. I heard people yelling, I heard people screaming, and then it just silence. In a matter of a minute, my world changed. I'm a big believer that the senior enlisted, their job is to bring everybody home. I didn't do my job that day. I struggle with that. You wonder if you missed something, if you would have moved faster, if you would have been quicker, if you would have picked up on something. But I think that's something you struggle with all the time. And if you keep going down that hole over and over and over, you're never gonna get out of it. Each year, they hold a Wounded Warrior Games, and I have the privilege of being on the Navy team that competes against the other branches, and they're amazing. They really are. So I have the privilege of being a part of their team. My swim coach, Jason, he put me in the pool for the first time. It's the first time I swam after my injury, and I was horrible at it, and I failed. And he said, "Did you swim?" "Yes." "Did you make it to the end?" "Yes." "Then what are you complaining about?" And Greta did the same thing, my cycling coach. I got on the bike and I fell so many times. I remember lying on the ground saying, "I don't want to do this anymore." And they put me back on the bike, and they figured out how to get it to work for me.
Obviously, I have a leg with carbon fiber. I'm heavier now because all the medical stuff, and I'm older, but it doesn't matter, you're doing it. And a bad day on the bike is way better than a good day at the hospital. This is pretty awesome.
Being a part of this team makes me realize that you don't have to be this picture-perfect sailor. As long as you try, there is someone out there to catch you. That was huge in my recovery. Because you can't move forward until you admit that something's different. And they helped me accept that about myself. They gave me back a piece that was missing. People think you're done, that you're gonna retire. Why? You just gotta make your own way. And if somebody sees me doing it, and they decide to try, then I've done my duty.
That's all we have time for this week, but if you want to see and read more, be sure to head over to defensenews.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.